So Biden put out that ad yesterday.
It's a new ad from the Biden campaign as President Trump hit the links this Memorial Day weekend, getting out for some golf.
You know, we talk about campaigns being about contrast. Obviously, the Biden camp put that out. Very fast turnaround.
Yeah, that was him yesterday.
And it came out at a time when, again, the New York Times puts up as their front page, just 1,000 of the lives lost from this. But you do have a real contrast. Of course, you look at those deaths, and of course, Joe Biden and others will be reminding this president that in January, at the same time, Joe Biden was warning that Americans weren't prepared for the pandemic, that Trump wasn't prepared for the pandemic, that he needed to let doctors and nurses talk to Americans and plan for the pandemic. Donald Trump was saying in Davos that it was just one person coming in from China. Now, nearly 100,000 are dead. At the same time, Peter Navarro, at the same time Joe Biden wrote his op-ed and his warning, Peter Navarro inside the White House was issuing a similar warning inside the White House to the president that up to 500,000 souls could be lost. We will see what the number ends up being after this fall. But you go into February, and Donald Trump said it's 15 people, only 15 people. We're doing a great job. Soon it's going to be down to 0. In March, the president told reporters he wasn't worried at all, that they were doing a great job and things were going to end up fine. Of course, in April, the president, with the finest doctors in the world, the finest research universities in the world, the brightest minds in the world that he could have access to, the president instead was asking Dr. Birx to look into injecting disinfectants into patients' bodies. Talked about hydroxychloroquine. Also, of course, talked about the fact that this fall, the virus probably wouldn't come back. David Ignatius, the president, was corrected by Dr. Fauci in real time. The FDA had to put out warnings. The VA put out studies. This president has been warned, or the American people have been warned time and time again not to listen to the president's ramblings. And I just wonder if we will finally get to a time where Americans, when they go to vote, understand that experience matters, that intellect matters, that just getting somebody who's an outsider that doesn't know how Washington works will matter. That's been our instinct to this century, to just go the last 20 years. Let's find somebody who's an outsider who's going to shake things up. I wonder if this terrible American tragedy will actually remind voters again that wisdom, experience, knowledge, compassion, and temperament, like FDR's temperament. He said he had a third-rate intellect, but a first-rate temperament. That temperament matters as well.
Joe, I think you're right to characterize this coming presidential election, in effect, as a character test for the country. People really need to make mature decisions about the kind of leadership that we need to get us from this period where we look at a front page of the New York Times that's all type of the names of people who've died, and as Mika said, that's a fraction of the total number, and find leadership that can bring the country back to its better days. And I think part of that, we need to be honest, is Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee, showing the country that he's that person, that he has those capabilities to be not just an adequate leader, but a great leader, because that's what the country needs right now. And I think when we try to step back and imagine what this election will be about as the world views it, this is a test of whether a democracy can really rise to a great challenge, a catastrophe that we're living through. Democracies are noisy. They're always scattershot, competing views. Can they organize themselves to be strong and powerful in responding to a crisis is our decentralized system of medicine. We don't have a national healthcare system, unlike so many countries. But can our decentralized system rally so that we end up getting the vaccine, the therapies that are going to, in the end, mark the end of this? We are a federalist system. We're not like China, a top-down, party-organized state. We're federalists. That was a decision our founders made. They didn't want a single unitary government. They were clear about that. They wanted these 50 states, each with a somewhat different response. How's that working? You could say there's a lot of evidence it's working well, but some that it isn't. So I think as we head toward November, we should think, as the world is thinking as they watch our elections, this is a character test for America. Is American democracy as strong as we always thought it was? Are the American people wise in the decisions they make? Will they pick leaders not just who are good for America, but who are good for the world? Because that's really what's at stake.
And will they pick leaders, Mika, that follow the advice in the middle of a pandemic of medical professionals, of the wisest people around in this area, of the best scientists, of the great minds from a country that has been awarded over 50% of every Nobel Prize for science since 1950? Or will he continue talking about his gut? Will he continue talking about injecting disinfectants into bodies or sticking lights into bodies or drugs that cause heart problems?
So you're just really kind of putting a frame around the crazy extremes this president shows every day, and every day it's something different, literally. And up against Joe Biden, who shows this is who he is, this is who he was, and this is who he will be. Someone who understands the magnitude of this crisis, someone who warned about it, someone who knows what to do moving forward because he's done it before. It's a pretty stark contrast for Americans during very divided times. Coming up, Joe alluded to the themes underpinning a powerful new column from Maureen Dowd. She writes of the president, quote, "He is the leader of the resistance to his own government, urging people and states to open up whenever they see fit, recommending Clorox injections, stifling Dr. Fauci, refusing to wear the mask." We'll read more from Maureen's column straight ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.